In this episode of the Awaken podcast, we're going to be exploring the ego. How do we evolve the ego rather than needing to dissolve it or destroy it? There is a different possibility available, and we're going to unpack it really deeply with some juicy stories sprinkled in the mix. We're going to look at what it means to look at your own ego, to confront what feels like ego death, to embrace a healthy ego, overcome inflation and deflation of the ego, and so much more. I'm ready to dive in, and I hope that you will join us. Grab a cacao and let's dive in. Welcome to the Awaken podcast,
where we share practical spirituality for modern living.
Join us as we dive deep into conversations about healing and transformation.
Let's go. Here we are. Another juicy podcast. Let's go. We've got our cacao. You want to join us with a cacao, a matcha, a tea, whatever you got?
Whatever you got going on.
You know the vibes.
And we love to take a breath and set an intention at the beginning of our conversation. So without further ado, let's go for the inhale. Tap in. Exhale it out. Connecting to our intentions for today.
My intention is to have fun, to bring a vibe, and to highlight any patterns that might be holding people back from accomplishing what they want.
Cheers to that. And my intention is to keep it real and speak from my lived experience and hopefully remind some people of some truth that they need to hear.
Yeah, I think when we first started off on this personal development path, when it came to the ego, I remember we were into books like Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And at that point in time on my journey, I was recognizing where my ego and pain body was limiting me or holding me back. But my belief then was that I needed to transcend my ego altogether. And now where we're here to offer a different perspective after 10 years of being in the work.
Yeah, a little story time. We're taking it back. This was in 2008. We had a public library membership. And I remember one day that we went, and it was a Sunday, and we would go to the library fairly frequently, and we found Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and A New Earth and Stillness Speaks.
That was the
all
first
of them.
one.
We found the audio CDs.
Yeah.
And we hired them and we started listening to them. And that was the beginning of the understanding of the ego. And I mean, what a game changer. I definitely still love those books and really value what Eckhart Tolle and other teachers have to say about the ego. And I love that along the way, we've also developed our own understandings of the relationship with the ego. And I think we have something additional to contribute to the conversation now, which
a little
is
bit
wild
different to
and
sprinkle on the
fun
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think our perspective is different. So let's dive into it.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
Well, defining the ego would be a good place to start.
Before we sat down and had this conversation, we did our own meditations, and then you went into a channeling session where you channeled for 1 hour about the ego. And during that session, I was writing down some notes. So I might read off my phone our definition of the ego, and then we'll unpack it and go from there.
Great. And for those of you who are already wondering about the channeling, we are going to share with you a relatable translation of what came through. And I think this will be the easiest way to make it really easy to understand, grounded, straightforward.
Yeah, to be clear, this is my own words that I wrote from what you said.
Exactly.
The ego is the part of our mind that creates our sense of personal identity. It's the part of us that says, this is who I am, this is what I believe. It wraps together our self-image, beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and memories into a unified package that defines, this is me, this is who I am. The ego's job is to create a sense of separation from others, the world, and even from our true selves. But it's important to understand that the ego isn't the villain in our story. It's a necessary part of our psychology, supporting us with our identity and purpose. When it's healthy, it helps us set boundaries and maintain autonomy, ensuring that we respect ourselves and others. And it provides us with a sense of purpose and direction, guiding us towards goals and aspirations that make our lives meaningful and purposeful. So there's so much more that I could say that I've written down, but I think that's a good place for us to start and unpack it, because when I first started this journey, I felt like the ego was something I needed to transcend. And
And like
then
it was a bad thing, a problem.
totally. And then through the work, I realized that, hold on a minute, I actually need my ego, but my ego needs to be in service to me, my higher self, and what I want to create in the world. It can't just like run reckless and be in the driver's seat. I need to become the observer of it. I need to have it in check. I need to befriend it and work with it.
Yeah. So this is key. The ego is not the enemy. The ego can evolve as you evolve, and they're really one and the same thing. As you evolve, that is a reflection of the evolution of your ego, your sense of self, your personality, the construct of what makes you you.
Yes.
We, as these temporary beings in physical bodies, are expressions of a higher intelligence. And that higher intelligence uses the technology of the ego to kind of filter and distill the essence of that expression into something that is individual and can interact with other individual fractals.
Yeah, otherwise we'd just get lost in the source, right? We
Right.
wouldn't be an individual personality. We would be floating in the abyss of the collective consciousness, one with all that ever is
Well, I
and
think
ever has been.
to also have a really mature, nuanced conversation about this, which I do want to have, along with being playful and, humble and keeping it so real and relatable. Acknowledging that I do believe that there is a place for the conversation about what exists beyond the ego. That is a real area of valuable contemplation. But there's also value and so much growth available here with working with the ego.
Totally. Well, I feel
But let's not skip ahead, fam.
yeah, let's not skip ahead into enlightenment just now.
Right.
Let's get on with the 3D human game and play and have fun. I
Yeah.
think where the ego goes wrong or when it's out of balance is when it forgets that it's more than just the mind and the body. It forgets that it's a spiritual being having a human experience, and it identifies with form, and it feels separate from the divine, and it leads from that place of separation. Like there's two ways that the ego can work against us from my perspective, which is the deflated ego, like I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I don't belong, something's wrong. These limiting beliefs that hold us back from creating things that we truly want to create. And then there's the inflated ego, which comes from a sense of entitlement or a sense of being disconnected from the whole, being in service to self. It's like the most selfish self.
Right. That's what the guide said this morning, that the unconscious, unevolved ego is the most selfish self. And really what we could also describe that as is an individual that is so identified with the form that they've incarnated as, that they believe that that's all they are. And that is limited.
It's very limited. Yeah, because from the ego's perspective, there will never be enough. It's always seeking more.
And the ego that identifies itself as on its own and separate from the whole is needing to take to survive.
Yeah, not just take, it's also in a sense of lack, like there's not enough. It's in a sense of control. It's looking for external validation. It's outsourcing its power.
Yeah.
It's in this place of not being in touch with the greater whole. It's so limited.
So understanding that we can also start to look at where we as humans in this day and age experience the unconscious and unevolved ego,
Mm.
because it's in all of
Yeah,
us.
I think a good place to start is relationships. You might be having a disagreement, and the ego will come in and it will always want to be right.
Mm,
Like, I'm right, you're wrong. And in doing that, it will abandon happiness to be right.
hmm.
Do you ever feel that? Like that you would rather be right than be happy?
Stubborn.
Yeah. And that's how the ego operates, right?
Yeah, it's protecting its position.
It defends.
Hmm.
Yeah. And if we look at the state of the world, my belief against your belief, you're right, I'm wrong, my ego clashing against your ego, that's where we're at. We're in this game of
Yeah,
separation, and
it's dense.
we all see what that leads to.
Yeah, it doesn't lead to collaboration
Mm.
or empathy.
Or contribution.
Yeah, or being able to create what's really for the greater good of the all. We
Mm.
miss so much opportunity to create something that would be ultimately better for everyone due to pride and that defensiveness, like you were saying, and wanting to be right and
Mm.
choosing that over feeling good, choosing looking good over feeling good,
Yeah.
choosing being right over being happy and connected.
And I think that's really easy to see, like within ourselves and out in the world. But another sneaky way the ego comes in is the diminished sense of self. And we might not realize that's ego in the moment. But
This is what you were calling the deflated ego.
yeah, the aspect of us that doesn't feel deserving, that doesn't feel worthy, that doesn't feel enough, that feels diminished in some way.
And how this can show up is holding yourself back, self sabotaging, going into a state of victim consciousness,
That's huge.
shrinking, envy, jealousy,
Mm.
resentment, shadow qualities, like banishing parts of yourself into the hidden shadow
Yeah.
because you aren't owning who you are and what you want.
Mm. Yeah, that's huge. And that also goes into the golden shadow. It's a part of your creative potential and what you would want to step into, but you haven't claimed it for yourself. You haven't owned that that's what you want to do. So, the way that often shows up, people will see someone taking up space, expressing themselves, and they'll judge them. They'll
Mm,
try and tear them down like they're not that good. They're nothing special. Oh, look at their flaws. I can see this and this and this. Like, it's a way that we can bring people down to make ourselves feel better.
for sure. And I think a lot of people who bring themselves down or hold back expressing themselves in certain ways don't realize that that's ego, and they'll think that they're above it, or they'll think that
That's how
they're
sneaky it is.
holier than thou,
Yeah.
or that they're humble.
Yep.
But actually, it's just another tricky way that the ego comes in the back door in an unevolved, unhealthy, unconscious way
Creating
to
separation.
create separation, exactly,
Yeah.
and make the person feel like they aren't fractal of the divine, like they aren't
Yeah.
an expression of God that's wanting to create beautiful, amazing things, and that they aren't meeting their own reflections,
Mm.
God in the many forms that we're all interacting with. And we don't see that when we're in the unevolved, unconscious ego. We just are out to survive and protect ourselves.
Yeah. And we believe that we're right and the other person's wrong. So there's no space for negotiation. There's no space for contribution. There's no space for kindness, to be in the heart, to be in a state of vulnerability and openness, because we're trying to protect and defend and pull people down. And a lot
Mm.
of people are operating within that matrix. And
Hmm.
I think the way out of that is to end that separation through connection, coming back home to the heart. But it's easier said than done when you're living in a state of survival. That's where a lot of people are operating from.
Hmm.
And when you're in a state of survival, you're living in a state of lack. You believe yourself to be separate from the divine. You believe yourself to be separate from your desires, from the ever-flowing abundance that's all around us to that life force that's flowing through each and every single one of us, you're blocking yourself off from connection with that life force.
Okay, story time. So I want to share a little bit about my own experiences in awakening, what we might call spiritual
Let's
awakening,
go.
and confronting my own ego construct and the transformation of it. So people will talk about ego death. I know we've talked about it. There are
Yeah.
clips of us talking about it online. And as time has gone on and we've connected more with the guides, even down to today, the channeling session that we did, there are new understandings that we're both having about the nature of the ego and specifically ego death and
Yeah.
what that actually is.
I actually wrote down a paragraph from your channeling.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's brief, but it speaks on that. So this is my own words.
Mm-hmm.
In the spiritual community, we often use the term ego death, but that's not accurate because nothing truly dies. Energy is not destroyed, it's transformed. A more accurate term for this phenomena is ego evolution, which is the process of upgrading the self and merging with unity consciousness. In this journey, you remain the character playing its role in the game of life. However, you transcend the illusion of separation from others, the world, and the field itself. The process of ego evolution can be challenging as it requires us to confront and transcend old patterns and beliefs. It calls for a willingness to let go of certainty and the need for control. It requires a willingness to step into the unknown and trust that life, the universe, God has got you. It requires you to surrender your self-destructive urges, survival responses, and coping mechanisms for a greater sense of awareness and connection with the whole. This surrender isn't about losing yourself, it's about gaining a deeper understanding of your place within the greater whole. Ego evolution.
Yes.
Let's go.
So this is what I want to highlight. As a reframe, try it on, see if it resonates for you. Instead of viewing it as ego death, looking at it as ego evolution.
Yeah, and what comes up for me is it's not necessarily about what we're letting go of. Yes, that's one aspect of it, right? But from the perspective of ego evolution, it's what we're letting in.
What we're making room for.
Who we're becoming.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, ego death experiences, aka ego evolution experiences that at the time felt like part of me was dying.
Me too.
Realizing now, thank you, universe, for the gift that helped me evolve. You know, it all makes sense in hindsight looking back, but at the time it was truly one of the most difficult initiations of my life. And I have two that I can distinctly recall that were the most gnarly and intense. And the first one that I want to share about is in 2012 when we went to India.
That was a big one.
That was a biggie. Oh, just takes me right back. Okay, so I'm going to give you the brief context here, everyone listening. In 2012, toward the end of the year, Lukis and I had a series of miracles and synchronicities happen, and we decided quite spur of the moment that we were going to sell all of our belongings and donate anything that we couldn't sell, pack up a small 10 kg, aka like 20-pound backpack each, and we went to India and we left behind our life in New Zealand where we'd been living, and we moved out of our house and everything.
Yeah, we didn't really know what was going to happen or what we were going to do. We were just stepping into the unknown and trusting that we'd be guided along that process.
Yes, and it was a one-way ticket. And we made the decision at that point that we were going to lead our lives based on the guidance of spirit. And it was a really big, bold move. And a lot of people were like, what are you guys doing? And this doesn't sound like a good idea. And I remember my parents were concerned about me going to India. They're like, I don't think you should go there and do that. And this all sounds quite, over the top and chaotic.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, we're doing it. It feels right. We're guided. It's aligned.
Yeah.
So fast forward, we get there. At the time, I had been in the lead up, I'll say, to India, I had been juice cleansing for months. Like I was on another tap, another frequency.
Yeah. And also you started channeling.
I did.
So
I
you had a lot
awakened
of-
my ability to channel
so
earlier that
you
year.
had a lot of high level guidance flowing through you, but we were early in our inner work still.
Right. We'd started around 2008, so we're like 4 years in, but a lot of growing and healing to do.
Yeah.
Very much still like in the pain, the trauma, didn't have a lot of tools and was just kind of casually going on the journey and discovering. So I had been juice cleansing and eating raw vegan that year. And then we get to India and I'm
to
like,
be clear, we were doing that for detox to heal our body.
Yeah.
We were basically on an elimination diet, and there were so many different challenges that we were experiencing on a health level, and eliminating certain foods was really supporting us to basically helping us to heal a lot of challenges that we were facing at that time.
Right. And so earlier, that's a whole story for another time, but I had rashes all over my body, chronic fatigue, all sorts of issues going on. And so I was on a healing journey and like finding my way with it. Anyway, that's beside the point. So we get to India and I'm on this raw vegan, like juice-based diet, eating fruit and so on. And I go in for a couple of days into this new environment in India and I'm like, yeah, I can maintain my raw vegan diet. Next thing you know, I get utterly slammed with food poisoning. This is only a couple of days into the trip. And we're landing on the beach in this beautiful beachfront little hut. It was humble, but it was stunning.
I think you skipped over something though, because when we first got to India, it was like culture shock.
It was.
For us. And I think that initially brought up our fears. We were like, what are we doing here?
It was like, yeah, what are we doing? Was this a really bad idea? Like we trusted this guidance, but this doesn't feel so good.
It felt unsafe.
Unsafe and unsettling, like unsafe to the nervous system because it was so overstimulating. And so, yeah, on one level, food poisoning, but on another level, nervous system, overstimulated, going through really a spiritual awakening, blasted with energy and information. I was channeling pages and pages of information every single day.
Yeah.
And this is where my ego evolution initiation really began.
One of the things that I was witnessing within you on a practical level was one, you were channeling all this high level guidance. So you're being initiated through that process, but it was also bringing up your fears. It was bringing up your control patterns.
It was like a huge purge.
It was. You were like really purging. And I think that was part of the reason that you got sick beyond like the food poisoning aspect, because you actually remained sick for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And I remember.
This is just a side note, a follow up to the story.
Yeah, I remember we got you tested as well, and the doctors
came
were
back
like,
clear.
yeah, there was nothing wrong with you. There was no parasites. There was no form of anything. They couldn't identify anything at all.
And I was like violently ill for 3 months.
Not just
straight.
that, you were like hallucinating.
Yeah.
And you were going in and out of consciousness and like having visions. And
I would sleep during the day and be up all night.
yeah, and we know in many cultures when different, we could say, wizards or
Priestesses, healers, medicine people
are initiated in that level of contact, then
there'll be a spiritual illness.
it happens, especially if it's something you're pushing away or you're rejecting on some level. Like you didn't have any mentorship, like zero. We were like on this journey alone out in the wild, wild west of India, just kind of doing our thing.
Yeah, it was really difficult. So that's where it began. But more than the surface level details of being sick and feeling unsettled and overwhelmed and all of that, there was something a lot deeper occurring. And what it felt like was being confronted with all of the parts of myself that felt out of control and afraid, and being asked by spirit to let them go and to let in a higher intelligence to basically take the lead and guide and govern my life.
To
And
reorganize those
it was
parts.
the way I see it, or the way it felt, is if you imagine that there is this guiding force that comes in and it's like a tornado Mack truck that is coming in full force, and you're like, I'm not ready, I don't want it, no, it's chaotic, it's too intense, it's going to destroy me. And it's like,
We think it's going to destroy us.
right.
Yeah.
And then it just keeps charging forward. And as it approaches and tries to take over the energy flow of your life, you hold on for dear life to everything that you think is you,
You resist it, yeah.
your ego identity,
Your beliefs.
your construct that you've formed, and you become irrationally terrified of what you think you're going to lose. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah,
And so I started to feel like I was going crazy.
yeah. I've been there.
And you saw it.
Yeah.
You saw me going through that.
Which looked like you spiraling into depression, feeling hopeless, not really wanting to be here. Then there was one day that I remember you worked with a healer, and that changed everything for you because she was able to support you to have a massive release, which you needed. And I remember you coming back from that healing session, and it was like you were a different person. Whatever had been released, and you had fully embraced it. And I remember how light and how energetic, and you were just like, yes, like you had your life force back again.
I got it back.
And I
for
recognize
sure.
that with when we're going through these ego evolutions or ego deaths, that they can feel like we are dying, but it's not that we're physically dying. It's that a part of us is being stripped away, whether that's
And transformed.
transformed.
It's like the psychic surgery that you think you don't want,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. And the more you cling onto it, the more you try and control, the more you're not able to let go, the more painful it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we got to that point pretty quickly in the story, but I will say that the lead up to this was several months, like we touched on. And it did get to the point where I was experiencing serious suicidal ideation and I wasn't getting out of bed during the day. And I was so scared, and I felt like my life was being taken from me by this initiation. And I knew it was spiritual. I knew that that was what I was grappling with, and I did not want to let go and let God lead in my life. And I've heard this countless times from other people who have gone through their own ego dissolution, initiation, evolution type of experiences, that you don't want to let go, and then you realize that you have no other choice because holding on starts to be so painful.
Yeah, and that could be letting go of a relationship, letting people walk out of your life, you having to walk away from people in your life. It could be a change in career. It could be a way of being that once served you that no longer served you. So, for example, a coping mechanism, something that you do that's maybe self-destructive, that you realize, hold on a minute, this is not serving me anymore and I need to make a change. But where it becomes tricky is not only does the ego create separation, when it's an unhealthy ego leading the show, there is resistance to change. It's clinging on to the old way of being because it's all it's ever known. And to change feels like destruction to that part of the self. So it grips, it controls, it tries to hold on for dear life. But in doing so, it just creates more suffering. So the way through, like you said, is to surrender and to hand it over to a higher power. And in that moment, it's challenging to do, but it will get to the point where you have no choice to do that.
Exactly. And there's so much more nuance to how this all unfolds, because I think people could listen to that story and be like, oh, well, it sounds like you got food poisoning and you were sick and you were suffering and you're overlaying a spiritual meaning onto it or something. But there was so much about those few months in India and the experiences that we had and the people that we met, where it felt like the field, the quantum field itself was speaking through people to me,
Yeah.
to you, giving us messages and guiding us to see life and interact with life in a whole new way. And at times it was so confrontingly real.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to believe it. Even though I've been thinking I want to awaken, when the awakening starts to happen.
Can be shocking to the nervous system.
Yes. So that's a real thing. And I just want to say, if anyone out there is going through it, it's not easy, but the reframe that this is your evolution and your initiation is the key to see the light at the end of the tunnel and get through.
Yep. And the reframe is less about what you're letting go of and more about what you're letting in. Like if you can put your focus on who you're becoming, that is a lot more inspiring and invigorating and exciting rather than what you're letting go of.
Okay, on that note, I'd love to hear a story from you about a way that you've let go or perceived that you've been letting go and realized that actually you've let in an evolutionary upgrade.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, I think I'll take you on a little journey. So I'm sitting in ceremony. Well, actually, before I'm sitting in ceremony, I've decided that I'm going to sit in ceremony and I have a lot of fear. So I'm aware of this fear and it feels like a deep fear and I can't shake it off. And I'm trying to talk myself out of going to ceremony. Like, maybe you don't need to go. Maybe it's not for you. The excuses and the stories are coming up, but I know I have to go. I know that it's like aligned for my soul. So I go and I sit in this ceremony. And on the way there, when I arrive, I get bit by a dog.
And we are talking about an ayahuasca ceremony here.
Yeah, so I get bit by a dog. And I'm like, okay, we're going in to face the fears.
But there was a part of you, right? I remember this, where you were like, is this a bad omen?
Totally.
Should I not go?
Yeah.
And you lost your key?
Yeah. It was like an aspect of me was trying to self-sabotage me because deep down within my heart, I knew that I was meant to be there, but I was coming up against my own fears. So as I entered into that ceremony, I knew that there was going to be a shedding, a letting go, and I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that I was facing off with my fears. And the way I can describe it is if you imagine a little kid that grew up with a safety blanket its whole life, and as it's growing up, the parents decide like, hold on a minute, you're at an age now where it's time to take the safety blanket away. And they go to take it away and the kid's like, no, I'm not ready yet. And it holds on. And that was me holding on in ceremony to my sense of identity, my beliefs, my perception about myself and the world that no longer served me. And spirit was like, it's time to let go of all of that. And the more I resisted it, the more painful it got, to the point where it felt like I was physically dying in the ceremony. And I remember sinking underneath the ground. I remember my body dissolving into nothing. And I remember becoming greater awareness with everything that's ever been, with the oneness, with the field itself. And in that point, I felt free. And then I recognized, hold on a minute, I'm not dying. The old me is dying. It's being transformed. It's being evolved. Like I am right here, right now. My body is still here. I am here. I am alive. I am stepping into new possibilities. I realized I had been at the edge of what I thought was possible in my sense of self, and I'd moved beyond that version of me. And now I was open to new possibilities. So in the moment where I was open to new possibilities, I recognized that I had been playing so small in life, and I had been allowing my fears to slow me down and stop me from taking up space and doing the very things that I knew that I came here to do. I was the one holding myself back. I was afraid of judgment. I was afraid to use my voice. I was afraid to take up space and, be out in the world. And all of that had to shed. All of that didn't serve me. And now it was time to step into who I came here to be.
Main character energy, baby.
Main character energy. So
yeah, this is the upgrade that we're talking about,
yeah,
right?
not letting your fears define you.
And recognizing that there is room for a healthy, evolved ego
Yep.
in your life. And when you go through these rites of passage or initiations, whether they come spontaneously or through ceremony or awaken breath work or whatever it may be, meditation, deep inner work, you can come to a place within yourself where you're ready to let go and let in a higher possibility or potential for yourself. And like what you're saying, in the process of that occurring, the parts of you that have been perceiving that your known reality is like the edge of the earth are going to feel like, what are we doing? This unknown equals annihilation, or it's the end of what exists.
This is not safe.
And when you go through that process of blasting through and confronting that limiting belief, which is so primal that it's beyond a limiting thought, it's an embodied physiological, like reptilian brain level embedded belief in a limitation designed to keep you surviving.
Yeah, it's a
that
package.
you have to overcome in order to birth yourself into that next level.
Yeah, it's like a package of information of who you think you are. And you have to be willing to release that.
And the whole system
that
just
go.
glitching out, being like, it's not possible.
Yeah, I'm dying.
And then suddenly you're like, oh, wait, we're still here.
Yeah.
And actually, I kind of like this version of me. It's better.
Like, holy shit.
I got an upgrade.
I got a major upgrade.
Yeah. So instead of seeing it as ego death, maybe it's ego evolution.
Ego evolution, baby. And we're all in it in our own way. And if you haven't experienced it yet, you will, because it's a part of life.
So on that note, I want to say that what we've described are some examples of more radical ego evolution, but ego evolution is happening all the time.
Yeah.
Every day we're being invited to let in new possibilities. I mean, I think of our Awaken daily practice and that question that we ask at the end of every practice: what does my inner guidance want me to know right now? Every single time you tap in and ask that question, you're opening to ego evolution and accessing new potentials for yourself, which you can then embody as a part of your personality, as a part of who you be in the world. And it gets to be fun. It doesn't have to all be like scary and intense. And
yeah, and sometimes it is, and
Yeah.
that's okay, right? Because that's what we're here for too. But it gets to be fun, and it's never too late to reinvent yourself and to try on a new possibility.
you could do that today.
You could. I think one way that we can know when our ego is holding us back, when we have these limiting beliefs that kind of keep us in a prison of limitations. So they could show up through not feeling good enough or not feeling worthy or feeling like something's wrong or feeling like you don't belong are really common ways that they show up for people. And people will recognize that in their life. There can often be these loops of like thoughts and feelings and behaviors that we're not able to move beyond. There might be a desire to create positive change in a certain area of your life, but for whatever reason, you can't actually move forward. And
Until you can.
yeah, and I think a lot of people find themselves there, but they're not quite sure what's holding them back.
Yeah.
And that's the ego.
And this is, you're so right. This is a trippy thing because the ego as a construct is not just one belief or a few beliefs. It's our entire sense of who we are, that identity or self-image, like you described it. And so there is a reinvention process that needs to happen. And this is why to evolve yourself or reinvent yourself, sometimes it can take years. Like I know for you and I, to work on parts of our ego that were unevolved and haven't been serving us, it's been a year by year, month by month process.
Sometimes it's like a breaking up with an old part of you that takes a while to break up with.
Exactly.
It's not
It's
just
on
like,
again and off
yeah,
again.
it's on again and off again and on again and off again. And that's just the way it is until it isn't.
Do you want to share any examples of that where you've
Yeah.
worked on parts of yourself that you've recognized were unhealthy, unevolved ego, and you're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
not serving me
No,
anymore?
totally. It shows up for me in many different ways. But one of the ways that I'm most familiar with it showing up is a sense of lack for me. So the diminished ego. So it used to be, I'm not good enough. I'm not enough. I've spoken about that so much. But then that would move into my life. So my life isn't enough. Things shouldn't be like this. I should be further ahead. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough this. I don't have enough that. So there was a sense of lack and scarcity, which was a mindset, right? Which comes from the ego. And
And also feeling entitled in a way and then feeling let down.
yeah, feeling let down by life, feeling like life didn't have my back.
All of this being ideas that you essentially made up in your head.
Yeah, which robs you from the present moment, from
Right.
actually being able to enjoy what's here right now. So I've spoken about that in the past, but when that comes up for me, I'm aware of it now. And then I have to do the work to not let that part of me lead me, because that part of me is still there and it wants to lead the show, but I just know that's not in service to how I want to feel and what I want to create. Because when we're creating from a sense of lack and scarcity, we feel separate from our desires. But in order to create our desires from, say, when we're working with the law of attraction, we can't be coming from a space of lack, right? We can't be looking at our environment as it is now and letting that dictate how we feel and what we believe is possible. Because our present moment doesn't define what we're creating and what we're stepping into.
You're touching on something really important here too, which is that entitlement, deserving trap. And I actually see a lot of people who are doing personal development work and spiritual manifestation work get caught up in this, not realizing it is a form of ego trapping or the ego creeping in the back door and perpetuating the person's suffering because they think that they're being creative, but what they're actually doing is overlaying mind-based expectations onto what is, closing off from divine timing and divine order and guidance that may be attempting to come through to direct them into what's actually trying to flow.
Yeah.
And it becomes controlling
Yeah.
and therefore it perpetuates more suffering, more sense of separation, more of this poor me thinking of it should be a different way.
Yeah. And I noticed like when I go into that, I'm trying to force things or make things happen. And in doing that, exactly what you said, I'm cutting off from the natural flow of how things want to happen. And in doing that, I'm going into binary thinking, which is very limited. You know, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. And I'm cutting myself off from creative potentials. Like I can only see two ways. And both of those ways don't feel good when I'm in that limited state.
Right. It's like your way, you know, the old saying, my way or the highway.
Yeah.
It's got to work out how I envision it. Otherwise, I've been let down by life.
Yeah. But there's creative solutions always available to you when you move beyond the ego. Like one of the things that I'm so thankful for is Awaken Breathwork. You know, when we go into the deeper therapeutic journeys, I'm able to access so many creative solutions because one of the things that happens is we move beyond our DMN, our default mode network, which is a part of the brain which is associated with our ego identity,
The sense of self.
the
Yeah.
sense of self.
It's residing in the brain too,
Yeah.
everyone.
And as we move beyond that identity, which can be really limited, and we access a non ordinary state of consciousness, we open up to more creative potential. And that's an amazing space to get to. You know, breathwork journeys just don't have to be about emotional processing and letting go. They're also about letting in, right? Which is a big
Yes.
part of breathing, letting in, inviting in more life force and more creative energy into your body.
I love that you brought in the default mode network too, because that's such a beautiful example of the malleability of our sense of self. We know that neuroplasticity is a fave topic of ours. We love to talk about how we can rewire the brain and our beliefs. And your ego, your sense of self, can also be upgraded and transformed. And you can actually turn down the volume on that identification, that part of you that's like, this is me. If you turn down the volume on that, then you can get to work kind of going into the operating system, which is what we do with the breath work. We go into a non-ordinary state. We start to clear out the unresolved emotions and tension that are contributing to this holding pattern that's going on. And from there, there's this clearing and space created. And I love how some people will call the ego EGO, edging God out. But what I see is that when we bring in something like breath work, or plant medicine ceremonies can be another way to do it, we create an opening and a clearing. And when the ego steps to the side or gets set aside and God comes in, then God gets to work on the ego too. And God, source, the divine, whatever we want to call it, has the ability to upgrade your ego
Evolution,
so that
baby.
and from there, what becomes possible is an ego self that identifies its position, or who I think I am, let's call it, as I am an individual that is connected to this higher intelligence.
Yeah, and that's where we get to play the game. That's where we get to co-create with a greater intelligence, right? That's where we get to step up and main character energy of allowing ourselves to play the game of life while we can be connected to a level of contribution and service and what we can give to the greater whole. Like, let's make the world better. Let's have fun being characters in this game of life and being connected to something so much bigger than ourselves. And let's have fun doing it.
And this also connects into what you were describing about the inflated versus the deflated ego. And when you are evolved in your relationship with your ego and you recognize that you are actually connected to this higher intelligence, and that just as others are expressions of the divine, so are you, there also comes this balancing or this harmonization of the inflation and deflation of the ego. And so rather than seeing yourself as less than or better than and needing to operate in that binary hierarchical drama, you can step into more of an understanding of unity and belonging and inherent worthiness and see that in other people too. So
That's sexy.
yeah, it's less competitive. You can play with competition as much as you want to and like have fun with that, of course. But also it's less competitive survival energy.
It's not coming
and
from
more,
separation.
Yeah, and more collaborative, co-creative possibility pursuing.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Yes,
That's
me
what
too.
I'm calling it more of.
So this is fun, and we want to encourage all of you to recognize that deciding who you want to be and knowing who you are in this lifetime does not mean that you're going to be this forever. It does not mean that this is your finite only existence. You exist beyond this. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. But while you're here, let's enjoy the ride. Let's go all in and have fun with it. Let's be aware and remember that we have access to the support of this incredible higher intelligence that wants to help us out and work through us to create miracles and beauty in this world. Like, we are the paintbrush and the paint.
Yeah.
And God is like, hey, go there, go there, go there. And we get to have fun with it.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go all the way into ego dissolution and not having a sense of self just yet. If you want to play a little bit in the game of life, then there's a whole lot of value here too.
Yes, there is. And when the ego tricks you into thinking that you are nothing more than the mind and the body, and there is nothing beyond you, and you feel disconnected from spirit and your own intuition, and you're in a sense of separation from your desires, meaning you're not living from your heart, you might be in a state of survival, then that is your reminder to do the work, to come back home to your heart and to connect with a greater awareness of the energy that is always ever present, guiding you through this experience of being alive on this beautiful planet. Because you can accomplish so much more by being plugged in and connected to that which is greater than you.
Okay, it feels like we're coming to the end of this conversation. So I guess we can share some last little nuggets. One thing that I definitely want to touch on before we wrap up is the power of separation when worked with mindfully and in a loving, healthy way. And that looks like, for example, in our relationship, you and I having our own ego identities established. We don't want to be the same.
Yeah, when we're too merged, we're not the best version of ourselves.
I love being me
I love
and
being
being
me.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love you being you.
And I
And
love you being you. I don't want you to be like me.
exactly.
No, that's not good. I want you to be you.
Yeah. Be your own main character and I'll be
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah.
And then the other part of this too is the things that come with having a healthy sense of self, like good self-esteem,
Confidence.
unapologetic willingness to set boundaries in your life and know what you want and what you don't want.
Yes.
We're really into things like raising our standards and understanding that we don't need to abandon ourselves in order to be good people.
Yeah.
We can be authentic, we can be heart-led, and we can also know where we're going
Yep.
and who we're for and who we're not for. You know, they say even Jesus had haters. I think when you have a healthy ego, you can accept that.
Yeah, you're always going to be the villain in someone else's story.
And there's room for compassion there and recognizing that you don't need to make anyone else be further along on their journey or more like you or less like whatever
No, take
in
away with
order to be
judgment.
okay.
Exactly.
When we see that the ego has its role, we can also see that people who aren't even interested in personal development and growth and spirituality and whatever else we're into have their role too.
Yeah.
It's all a part of the movie, the
Yep.
game.
It's all a part of the higher plan. I want to leave you with a reminder that it doesn't take much to change your state. So when you find yourself feeling separate, in a state of survival or lack, or there's not enough, when you're focused on what's wrong, close down your eyes, take some deep restorative breaths, come back home to your heart, and see through the lens of what you're grateful for, what you can appreciate, and put your attention on that. There's always something in your life you can appreciate. And when the ego is keeping us in a state of feeling separate, coming back home to the heart is always the way that's going to support us.
I love that. Well, I think we're at the end of the combo. Sending everyone love.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, share it with a friend, share it on social media, follow, subscribe, all the good things.
Yeah.
We're going to be back again with another episode real soon, which I'm so excited for. I love this time.
Yeah.
And
Make
till
friends
then,
with your ego, make it work for you.
yeah, and reinvention is available. You're amazing. Go enjoy being in your human suit.
Let's go.
See you soon.
Much love.